I'm Natasha Chilingarian.
I'm Michael Ogden. This is Shared Accounts with CU Time, sponsored by Q2. Thank you, Q2. Thank you. Okay, producer Zach, Natasha, we're going to try out a new game at the top of today's show. It's something I created yesterday when I thought about it. I'm calling it No Kidding. These are things celebrities have in common with each other. All right. I had to do a lot of Googling about this. So, what I'm going to do, and you guys can just discuss, try to figure it out, but I'm going to list celebrities, and you try to come up with either what they have in common, or I'll tell you what they have in common and you guess the celebrity.
Oh,
I'll show you
okay.
how this works. Okay. We'll try it out.
All right.
Okay. First time I'm doing this game, so I'm just making up the rules as I speak. So, here we
Okay.
go. And I've paired up celebrities, so you'll see again. Okay, so for instance, question 1. Which of these two celebs are Virgos? Zendaya and Beyonce, Morgan Freeman and Justin Bieber, or Michelle Obama and Leonardo DiCaprio?
I mean, I don't know that. The only celebrity I know is a Virgo was Keanu Reeves, because I think I knew that as a fun fact when he
Oh,
was like my celebrity
interesting.
crush back in junior high. But I don't know any of their
Okay, this
birthdays.
was a dumb question. That's my
That's
fault.
okay. No, I just don't
Okay.
know their birthdays. I
Yeah.
mean,
Okay, it's
yeah.
Zendaya and Beyonce. Fine. They have that
Okay.
in common.
Good
They're
for
both
them.
Virgos.
Not
Okay.
even going to let me
Okay.
guess. All right.
Nope. I wasn't.
Oh.
That question was too stupid. I apologize. I should be ashamed.
No.
Okay,
Just
I like
yeah.
this question's better. Okay. These two celebrities were related by marriage. Queen Elizabeth II and Olivia Rodrigo, Nicolas Cage and Elvis Presley, or Rihanna and Jim Carrey.
Oh, I genuinely know this one.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Natasha, do you know it?
I don't.
Okay, Zach, what do you
I'm
got?
surprised.
Nicolas Cage and Elvis.
Correct.
Because Nicolas Cage was married to his daughter.
Yeah, Lisa Marie Presley.
Yeah.
From 2000 to 2004. So you know what that means? Elvis didn't ever know it. It's
Never
kind of
knew
a
it.
thing.
Yeah.
They were
Okay.
related, but Elvis never knew they were related because he was dead.
See, now I should have known that because I read Lisa Marie Presley's memoir
You did.
last year. It was the one she wrote with her daughter.
Oh,
I'm talking
right.
about, yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe there was this portion in there about him, but it
Oh, by
somehow
the way,
didn't stick in my brain. I forgot. Yeah. Oh
she
yeah, I
probably
was with
doesn't want to
him,
remember
that
it
weird
either.
guy. Yeah, I know. Who
Married
would
a
want
crazy
that?
person for 2 years. Okay, how about this one? These two celebrities were teachers before becoming famous. Chris Evans and Jennifer Aniston, Hugh Jackman and Sting, Margot Robbie and Channing Tatum, who were teachers.
Teachers.
I think it was Hugh Jackman.
And Sting? You're correct.
Oh wow.
They were both
Huh.
teachers.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
And the only reason I know that is there was a video where one of his students became a reporter and interviewed him on the red carpet.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
That's kind of cute. Huh. Okay, yeah, Hugh Jackman and Sting. Okay, you know what? I kind of hate this next question. I'm just going to skip to the last one. Do you want me to tell you the one I'm skipping? Here it is.
Just do it.
Yeah, I'm
I'll do
curious.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
With that, I'll edit it out.
It was supposed to be what do Lady Gaga and Brad Pitt have in common? They were both banned from China. Pitt for his terrible movie 7 Years in Tibet, and Lady Gaga for meeting with the Dalai Lama. Anyway, I didn't like that one. Okay, here's a last question I have. I thought was pretty funny. Which two celebrity pair are both inventors? Which celebrity pair are inventors? Scarlett Johansson and Matt Damon, Jamie Lee Curtis and Eddie Van Halen, or Jim Carrey and Queen Elizabeth II?
I have no idea. I don't know. I'm gonna
Who would you
guess
guess?
the second pair.
Yeah, I'd guess maybe Eddie Van Halen created something
And-
guitar-wise.
And Jamie Lee Curtis invented something?
The Halloween franchise.
You know what? You guys are correct.
Oh wow.
Jamie Lee
Okay.
Curtis, Eddie Van Halen, both have U.S. patents. Eddie Van Halen for a guitar support device. And this, I didn't look into it, but it's Jamie Lee Curtis invented some kind of diaper design.
Really?
I had no
Okay,
idea.
that's random. Huh.
I know.
Is it related to the probiotic yogurt?
It got 100% could be related to that yogurt stint she did.
Oh yeah, maybe, yeah. Well, you know what? That actually that's the first time I actually said the name of the game. No kidding.
No
'Cause
kidding. See,
I am
that's
like
exactly
that was
right.
a reaction to that. Good, so you picked well for the name.
Natasha gets it.
I guess.
Oh,
I don't
God.
know. I'm
Let's
trying.
start this
I
show.
don't know.
That was fun. Thank you. Hey, everybody, welcome to Shared Accounts with CU Times. Coming up, we are chatting with Jeff Scott. He is Vice President of Fraud Intelligence at Q2. We're talking about some scary stuff happening with account takeovers. My God. Criminals are smart. I am fairly stupid. Both can be true, just so you know. Really great chat with Jeff. First up, we do have to do what we do, which is take a break from the week. Check in with Natasha.
Hey, Em.
How's the dog?
Oh, she's
Your new
good.
little
She's
puppy?
so sweet. Yeah.
Okay.
We're still working on one thing is the potty training is
Sure.
still not happening very well, but got to
Got it.
work on that. And yeah, I'm about $1,500 in the hole with vet visits so far. And
It'll
I'm
get
like,
worse.
this is
Yeah.
it's an expensive choice, but that's okay. It's
Okay.
she's cute.
That's
So,
funny.
Anyway,
Okay.
how are you?
Well, doing fine. Trying to
Good.
get out of winter officially. It just kind of
Right.
keeps edging back and forth of spring, not spring, whatever. It's fine. It'll get there. I do want to ask you, though,
Yeah.
what have you been watching this past week?
Yeah, well, I actually wanted to bring up
Mm.
not necessarily what I've been watching, but my mom, Michelle, who we've kind of
Yeah.
talked about before on the
We
podcast.
love
She may
her.
have even
Yes.
maybe made a brief comment once or twice in the background while I was
She
recording
has.
while she
Yep.
was around about a movie we're talking about. But so her new thing
Yep.
is BritBox. She recently got a subscription to BritBox, which is all like, the British
I
shows,
love
and
that. Yeah.
loves it. And I know we had talked about it briefly maybe a week or two ago, and you were very interested in what she had been watching on it. And so I actually did get to ask her what are her favorites on BritBox so far, favorite
Okay.
shows. So if you're
Please.
interested, I can tell you.
Please. Yeah.
So the first one is called Dr. Foster.
Okay.
I was actually visiting while she was watching it. She was like so into it. I think I was just busy with something else when, she would watch them. And I was like, well, I didn't get into it myself. But it's about a woman who's a doctor, Dr. Foster, suspects her husband of having an affair. And it just gets really dramatic and crazy.
I know this show.
Really?
I don't know her name, but I can picture her. She's kind of shorter black hair, I think.
Yeah.
Kinda
She has
curly.
shorter brunette, kind of taller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I may have watched this whole show a long time ago. It's a good show. Good job, Michelle. That's a great pick.
Okay, next one is Honor. And I can't, it's Honor, just Honor, spelled with the British way.
Okay.
And O-U-R. I'm trying to look it up right now, and I actually can't find it on IMDb. Oh, maybe it's this one. Because I'm looking up, and there's like a Korean show named Honor, and that it's obviously not the same one.
Okay.
This one, I'm guessing, is it. It's a detective, Caroline Good, vows to bring justice for a young girl murdered by her family for falling in love with the wrong man.
Whoops. Okay.
Yeah.
I love this. All right.
Oh, yeah. She likes real kind of drama. Like,
hey, man, that BritBox stuff is great for that.
yeah.
This is fun. I like
Okay.
this.
The next one, there's only two more. What Remains. I actually did watch this with her, and it was a fun one. It's about, you know what? I actually brought it up already on a previous podcast, so I don't need to get into it. It's the one where it centers around a small apartment or flat building, and there's a murder, and it's like like a whodunit of like who committed the murder. But anyway, that was a good one. Already talked about it. Finally, there is a show, I think her and my dad were watching this, called The Bay. I think it's police in Morecambe Bay area in the Lancashire, butchering all these names, investigate missing persons and suspicious death. So it's like just a detective show.
Love it.
In a bay in the UK. So
Michelle, thank you.
There we go. Your weekly recommendations.
Any others she passes along, please give it to us.
We'll do. Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Mom. All right. What about you? What have you been watching?
Very quickly, took a step back to watch a movie that came out a handful of years ago, 2017, A Happy Death Day.
Oh, God, yeah. I haven't watched it, but I know the gist of that.
Yeah, it's a Groundhog Day over and over. This lady keeps getting murdered on her birthday. It's a comedy.
Yeah. Okay.
It's pretty darn silly. What did I give it? 2.5 stars.
Okay.
It was fine. It was silly.
Yeah, it's kind of like the tarot and like the Ouija,
Yeah,
like group of young people in a horror and just kind of a
it
jump
just keeps
scare.
repeating everything all the time, and
Yeah.
it's funny, but they made apparently 2 more, so I won't be
Yeah.
watching those.
Don't blame you. Okay.
But it was good.
I must ask, just kind of reminds me, and there is a show I started a couple
Hmm.
days ago, and I feel like it's something you would also be maybe into.
Okay.
It's a show on Netflix. It's made by the Duffer Brothers who did Stranger Things.
Mhm.
It's called Something Very Bad is Going to Happen. Have you heard
Just
about this?
started watching it.
I'm really enjoying it. I think I've got through 3 episodes.
Okay. It's a
Yeah, it's a
long
good one.
form horror series.
Yeah.
So I'm
Very.
curious if I have the stamina to kinda stick with it for 8 episodes or whatever, but just started the first episode a few nights ago.
Oh, okay, yeah, and I was scared, I'll tell you, it
It's
doesn't
creepy.
takes a lot to really just scare me
It's
watching
creepy.
something because I'm
Yeah.
very creepy, very ominous, and,
Yeah.
anyway, I'm enjoying it. I'm
Okay,
very
good.
enjoying it,
Well,
so,
report
yeah.
back. I'll let you know if I keep watching it. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool.
Okay, well, and speaking of scary stuff with fraud, let's move on to the interview. Great interview with Jeff. I learned a lot of things about fraud prevention.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Few highlights that he talked about. One topic, one that I really find fascinating whenever I've talked to people about fraud and in credit
Yeah.
unions is just the balance you have to create between preventing fraud without frustrating members and making them
Uh-huh.
feel like their credit union doesn't trust them.
Yep.
Some really good points on that. He talks about how you have to be dynamic, not static with the fraud
Mhm.
controls, and that context is everything
Mhm.
as far as monitoring the member behaviors and determining if what they're doing is legitimate. So I thought that was
Yeah.
a good way to put it for that. Also talk about how AI fits into fraud prevention. There's some good news for credit unions that he brings up. They actually have an advantage over the fraudsters when it comes to the data they have at their fingertips. So
Too, and yeah,
yeah,
we won't spoil what that is, but listen up
yeah,
because it was quite
yeah.
revealing.
Yeah, definitely. So, anyway, and then of course, as always, we have a little fun at the end of our interview.
Ooh.
We get to find out what clique he says he belonged to in high school, which I
Yeah.
think is a fun question. I'd like to
Yeah.
ask that again
Okay.
of someone,
Sure.
hopefully not embarrass them. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's sort of
No, he was
interesting.
great. He was great.
Yeah. Also tells us what his very intentional pick was for his first album purchase
Yeah.
back in the 90s. So
That's right.
we have all of that coming
Yeah.
up next.
Hey, listeners, you know what? Account takeover fraud doesn't happen at just one moment. It does not. It unfolds across the member journey from login to session behavior to transaction activity. Q2's continuous account takeover protection helps credit unions identify suspicious actors earlier, apply the right friction at the right time, and stop fraud before it harms members. For a smarter way to detect account takeover sooner, act faster, and protect members with more confidence, visit q2.com/solutions/fraud-intelligence. That's q2.com/solutions/fraud-intelligence. Thanks, Q2.
Joining us in the virtual studio today is Jeff Scott. He is Vice President of Fraud Intelligence over in Q2. He is joining us from Austin, Texas today. Hey, Jeff, welcome to Shared Accounts.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, Jeff, can we do a quick temperature check? I want to do a comparison. Just because you're in Austin, what is the temperature there right now?
It is currently 74 degrees.
Ooh.
I'm at 40. Okay, so I'm in
Okay.
Madison, Wisconsin. Not terrible, but anyway, I love Austin. Such a great honking place to hang out and work. It's great.
Absolutely. Well,
Glad to
Michael,
have
you were at 77 degrees the other day, right, Michael?
It was a weird, Madison
Like that?
event, I'm
Yeah.
sure, but now
Weird
it's back
weather.
to
Yeah.
snow and ice.
It could be anything. It's that time of year. It could be
It is.
anything, anywhere.
Right.
Anyway, well, Jeff, yes, so glad to have you. I'm excited to dig into some fraud issues today, especially account takeover and what credit unions can look for, how they can prevent it, how they can mitigate it. So let's get right into that account takeover topic. So when we talk about account takeover, how would you say that this threat has evolved over the past few years? And also you've mentioned that it seems like it's accelerating right now. Why does it feel like it's accelerating at this moment?
Yeah, the economics really flipped is what happened. So 5 years ago, committing account takeover required real sophistication. So you had to have technical skill, patience, resources. Today, all of that tooling is much simpler, much more industrialized. So you could buy credential stuffing kits and phishing platforms for next to nothing now.
Oh.
And then you have the advancement of Gen AI. So fraudsters can now create, a convincing phishing program at scale, clone voices from a few seconds of audio and generate, a deep fake video. So basically the barrier to entry collapsed. And then you had the advent of things like real-time payments, like P2P, and that just completely changed the math. So when money can move in seconds, the window to intervene essentially disappears. And now it's fundamentally just sort of a different problem.
You've talked, I was reading some stuff you've written and listening to other speeches you've kind of given over time here. And you've talked about the importance of ingesting as many what you call signals as possible. What exactly do you mean by signals?
Yeah, a signal is any piece of data that tells you something about risk. So think about behavioral, transactional, environmental, and no single signal by itself is really conclusive. It's the power of correlating many of them together.
Sure.
And so I think about it sort of in, 3 buckets: device and environment. So is this a recognized device where there's IP? Is remote access software running, et cetera? Then the second is behavior. How is the person navigating inside the digital session? Do they look like a member that we know, or does it look like a script? And then transaction context. So is this consistent with what the member normally does? And so the institutions winning right now this fraud fight are the ones ingesting as many signals as possible and acting on that composite picture and not relying on any one data point.
Are those 3 buckets like examples that you share with credit unions to pay attention to?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we sort of talk about it in signals, models, and actions, which is sort of what I talked about there. And like the device and the environment are your signals.
Yeah.
The behavior is the model ingesting those signals and producing a risk decision. And then the action is, do we block the transaction? Do we hold the transaction? Do we stop them from doing something inside the platform?
Okay.
Right.
I appreciate you laying that out. That helped me kind of visualize quite a bit of the things you've been talking about.
Yeah. So, Jeff, going a little bit deeper into kind of, the indications, the signals, and, what credit unions can look for, let's just start with like before the member even logs in to their online banking account.
Yep.
At that point, before that stage, before we get to that stage, what kinds of things can credit unions realistically detect before that happens that might indicate fraud?
Yeah, more than most people think. So before a credential is ever entered, you can access the device posture. So is it known? Has it been seen across multiple accounts? Is malware or remote access software running? So you can look at the network, sort of the residential IP or data center, known proxy, geolocation, and does that match the member's patterns? You can even look at, how they got to the login page. Was it a bookmark? Did they follow a link from a phishing email? Like the DOJ just took down an organized ring in late 2025 that was using fake search ads and lookalike bank sites to harvest credentials. So that's totally a pre-login signal that one could ingest.
Okay.
And so by the time someone hits submit, you should already have a risk score on the session.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So just literally by tracking all their online movements, beginning to end. Okay.
I have a number of questions here, though, kind of following up what Natasha's digging into. Forgive me for my kind of stupidity on this, but I appreciate your brain. This is my first question. When somebody hits a login screen, what are the biggest vulnerabilities happening today?
It used to be, username and password alone was, sufficient, but it's been insufficient, for a while now. So password reuse is rampant. The credential supply on dark web is essentially infinite. So then enters multi-factor authentication, but even that is under pressure. So there's phishing platforms specifically designed to intercept, multi-factor authentication tokens in real time. They sit between the user and the bank. They capture the code as it's entered and they replay it. Or SIM swaps attack and compromise SMS-based factors. So what works better now is what we sort of refer to as adaptive authentication, where the system doesn't just ask, did you enter the right code, but does everything else about this session look right?
Okay.
Is it a recognized device? Is it a normal location? Is this consistent behavior? If yes, then reduce friction. If something's off, step the person up to the next level. And so the goal isn't to make the login harder for everyone. It's to make it, harder, obviously, for the right people.
Okay. I have 2 follow-up questions on this. And again, thank you. Because I find this fascinating, but it also makes me personally understand how dumb I am at this and realizing what's really going on. But are fraudsters getting better at bypassing what you were talking about, the traditional authentication methods?
For sure they are. And is sort of what happens between, login and a transaction is where, a compromised session sort of tells on itself, if you will. And so, the biggest red flag is there immediate account maintenance after login? Someone logs in. The first thing they do is change the email address, update the phone number, modify, alert preferences, and then they immediately initiate a transfer. A legitimate member almost never does that, right? So a fraudster does it because they're cutting the real member out of the notification loop. And then you can kind of look at, navigation patterns. Does the user go straight to wires or external transfers without checking a balance or looking at a statement? Most members browse a bit. A fraudster has a mission, so they move money fast. So those are some of the pathways that we're trying to detect. And there's some obvious stuff, like new payees, unusual amounts, unusual timing. All of it has to be evaluated against that member's sort of baseline behavior. And so a $5,000 transfer that's normal for one member is maybe a blazing, red flag for another.
Well, I got to tell you, you answered my triple follow-up on that, which was about what happens between login and transaction. So
I already knew you were going to ask the question. I was you were pre-login, and I had, the behavioral signal, so I just went ahead and...
There you go. God. See, he's an expert in this stuff.
I'm so easy to be hacked. Crap.
That's it's reading your mind.
Damn it.
Okay. Yeah.
Fine.
All right.
Good job, Jeff.
Okay, so then let's move on to the next step. So let's say that the bad actor does, unfortunately make it through authentication, which sounds like it's happening, more often these days. So let's say now they're in there. So during the transaction phase, what are some key indicators that credit unions can look for that something isn't right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely anomaly sorts of items in that at that point. So, it's new payees, it's the unusual amounts like we sort of talked about, it's new recipients, it's unusual amounts for that, specific member. It's things like that.
Oh, that's cool. Well, let me ask you this then, because you've already brought up friction a couple of times and kind of a layered approach. How should credit unions be thinking about building those layers without creating too much friction for those legitimate members out there?
Yeah, and what's hard here is, the layers need to be, invisible when everything else sort of looks normal.
Yeah.
And so most of the defense is, device recognition, behavioral analysis, transaction monitoring, and all that needs to run in the background. And so the member should never know it's there. So they shouldn't feel any sorts of friction around that. Friction should be, proportionate to the risk, which is hard to pull off, but you're looking at, recognized device, familiar location, routine transactions, 0 extra prompts, new device, unusual location, attempting a wire they've never done before, then you add the friction, step them up.
Right.
So if everything looks fine, they should be able to continue as normal. If one of those triggers is off, you step them up. But the devil's in the details there, right? In terms of all that we talked about, the ability to ingest the signals into a sophisticated risk model, within 30 seconds of the user being inside the session, you need to be able to detect these things. So
that fast?
Yeah, I mean, you've got 30 seconds is like what we quote to say the time someone can log into a session and do something you don't want them to do.
Ooh.
Wow.
The most sophisticated version of this, and this is where I think things are heading, is dynamically restricting what a user can do based on that real-time risk score. So if the session looks compromised, maybe you don't want to lock them out entirely, but you restrict them to a lower risk level. So they have view only activities while you figure out what's going on, or that keeps the member from being frustrated if it is a legit login. And if it's a fraudster, then they can't do any real damage, like move money. So this dynamic sort of restricted entitlements, if you will, is sort of where this is all headed, and all that's based on the signals, the models, and the actions.
Right. I find this so interesting, just trying to find that balance between, finding the bad guy, but then not frustrating members because, because let's say, for example, you said if a bad actor logs in, they'll like get right to business and do the account instead of browsing. Well, maybe a member is just busy and they're like, all right, I'm going to get right to doing my transfer, and it is legitimate. So yeah, and it's interesting. Like I just personally, like I've had a few experiences where I've felt like, not necessarily frustrated, but like I'm doing something bad, like I'm making a transfer and it's like, are you sure? Do you know this person? And it was like a handyman who legitimately did work and I had to pay him. And just, you feel like you're being tested, like when you're having to go through all these steps. So
that's right.
Maybe I'm oversensitive. I don't know. But how do you, I guess, just generally speaking, what are some other ways credit unions can reduce fraud, but not frustrating them or locking them out from doing what they actually need to get done with their money?
Yeah. This is the tension, right? In this fraud fight, there's really three sort of principles that we've seen our customers try to anchor around, and we advise them on. First is you have to understand the cost of both sides. So a fraud loss is expensive, but in certain cases, so is locking out a legitimate member.
Right.
Fraud victims are significantly more likely to leave their institution, but so are members who feel like their credit union doesn't trust them or understand. Sort of the example, Natasha, that you just sort of laid out.
Right.
So the second thing is you need to be able to make the balance dynamic, not static. And so static rules like block every transaction over 5,000 create friction that doesn't account for context. And in the world of AI and in the world of fraud, context is king. Okay. Context is everything.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is, and this is where credit unions, I think, have just an inherent advantage, is the relationship model matters. A teller who knows Mrs. Johnson and notices she seems confused or pressured during a call, that's a human signal no technology can really replace. And so, some credit unions have literally stopped members from being scammed because a staff member recognized something was off. And, that's this sort of credit union model at its best. It's like, your members. But member education has to sort of scale. So if you proactively tell members, if you get a text asking for a code you didn't request, it's not us, don't share it, that member becomes sort of harder to defraud. So it needs to be this sort of simple, memorable, actionable. But like what you were talking about, Natasha, it's like what we would hope the system would do over time there is you say, yep, nope, this was me. And we're recording that now as a new signal, and it's more context into who you are as a member of that credit union. And then next time, maybe we don't have to give you that friction. And our hope is that the members of the credit union are seeing the sophistication of that system grow over time. And that makes you feel protected and it makes you feel part of it.
Jeff, can I ask you a question, put you on the spot a little bit about Q2? How do you feel like Q2 is doing when it comes to that process that you're talking about of reducing the frustration on members and reducing friction where it doesn't need to be? How do you feel like you guys are doing?
Yeah, I think we are doing everything we possibly can to get the right tools along those building blocks we talked about in terms of signals, the models, and the actions.
Okay.
And where we're sort of uniquely positioned and where our credit unions have told us we've got to be part of the solution in solving this is we sit at the intersection of their members' data and the workflows of those members in their digital channel journey and their transactions. And so we have signals just from the network security perimeter and from the credit union. We have the model and we have the ability to act real time because we are the digital channel that the customer is inside. And that's where they're going to change an event or they're going to change an address or they're going to generate a transaction. And so we feel like we're in this like trusted place of privilege. But what I would say is on like a maturity scale, there's still road to plow as we continue to deploy better, smarter models with more ingestion of signal over time.
When fraud's detected, again, it sounds like you guys are doing a really tremendous job, but I'm curious about the speed of fraud detection and what that looks like from a credit union perspective. Just how important is that speed factor to fraud factor?
I mean, it's critically important. I think most of our credit unions can empathize with this comment that a lot of what we've had historically in the industry is what I call next day reporting. So batch reporting hours later that says like, here's what's going on inside, your IP or and inside of your signals. And you're like, well, great. I can't do anything about it now. All I can use it for is to go back to the front of the system and try to make configuration adjustments. But historically, the tools weren't highly configurable. And so you've got to have a dynamic system across those signals, those models, and those actions, and you have to have observability of it. Like you have to be able to see what's happening in real time. Now, the other thing that we haven't talked a lot about is that the back office operations of the credit union here matter a lot. And what we don't want to do is overwhelm them with alerts that is similar to what you said, Natasha, where you get these alerts that like don't seem smart. Like we don't want to do that to the back office of the institution either, because they can't handle that workload. And so where we need the models to get to is to be able to do the research, be able to provide what the back office person should go enable and take it all the way to the 5-yard line, so that when they look at the system, it isn't like they've got to do a bunch of research on something. They're just like basically getting the answer and then they have to go act on it.
Okay, so next question here, Jeff. I feel like an interview these days is not complete without a question on AI.
Totally.
Let me ask you, how does AI fit into all of this? Do you think it's helping credit unions stay ahead of the fraud and are using some AI tools to better detect fraud? Or is it something that fraudsters are using just as effectively to do what they want to do? Or is it both?
It's both. It's kind of an arms race, honestly. And, it's like one side accelerates, the other side accelerates. Maybe like on the attack side, AI lets fraudsters create, like we talked about, like perfect phishing at scale, deep fakes, build synthetic identities, and the tools are accessible, they're cheap, and they're getting better and faster. They also have no boundaries. They don't have regulators. They don't care about data privacy, obviously. And so they can just go get the latest, greatest tool and go to town. On the defense side, for the credit union, AI clearly can process millions of signals in real time, like learn a member's behavioral baseline, flag deviations, automate first pass triage, prioritize investigator queues, something a human team could not do at scale.
Yeah.
And part of what our credit unions have really felt with the emergence of generative AI, really since COVID, is they can't throw bodies at this like they could in the past. It just doesn't scale. But the reason I'm optimistic on the defense side is the defenders, our credit unions, have the data advantage. So they have the complete picture. A credit union sitting on years of member behavior, transaction history, device fingerprints, session telemetry, has a massive asymmetric advantage over a fraudster holding, a stolen credential or half of Jeff's identity joined, with half of Natasha's to build a new synthetic identity. If you build the system to actually use that data, I think the defense wins, but you got to invest in it, and you have to, it's like the old adage, can't bring a knife to a gunfight kind of thing.
And that goes to your context, a comment earlier in this discussion. That's a wonderful loop you've just closed in my brain. Sometimes I feel kind of smart with this stuff, but sometimes I feel ultimately stupid. But again, you've closed a couple of loops for me today on this. Jeff, I want to ask you, we just have a couple of more questions, but I want to ask about education for both credit union staff and members. What is Q2 doing to kind of let members know about how important is this education stuff for the phishing, the social engineering scams, all of it? How do you tackle that?
Yeah, I mean, what we've done, and we've seen really smart credit unions do, and I actually think some of this came from, one of our credit union customers, but you treat it like a marketing campaign.
Okay.
So someone logs into the system, you want to surface an alert or a reminder, the same way you might surface an offer. And so coming along that digital journey with them as they're in the session to remind them of things is really the best teacher we've found versus a blast campaign of emails.
Yeah.
It's like real time. It's right there. It's surfacing something that says, are you sure about this? Or please be on the watch for X, or it's like on the home screen. And so we've seen, credit unions use that very smartly. And so, we've got a bunch of tools that, were originally designed for marketing that we use to educate members, educate back office employees, like in the piece of the system that, customer service team would look at, from Q2.
Yeah.
Got all that sort of there for them.
Great. I like the marketing idea. I hadn't thought about that either. Great.
Yeah. Okay, Jeff, we just have one more question before we get to the fun part of our interview. So
this part of the interview has been a real drag.
No.
I'm just kidding.
I didn't mean to say that this wasn't fun, but maybe I don't know, maybe we'll have a little more fun on the next one. We'll see. We'll find out.
Okay.
Now, so let's look ahead a little bit, with this fraud topics. Let's say we fast forward 2 to 3 years. Well, what do you think account takeover is going to look like? And what should credit unions be doing today to prepare for what's coming next in the whole fraud fighting battle?
I can't know for sure just because
Of course.
I feel like the world is even in the last 6 months has changed so rapidly, but I believe it will feel less like isolated incidents and more like a continuous sort of like ambient threat that you have to manage in real time. So it won't be like, hey, we caught a fraud. It'll be like our system is continuously assessing risk across every session.
Like fraud, white noise, just
basically,
oh, that's awful.
Yeah, I think identity will be harder to verify. Deepfakes and synthetics will make it harder to trust that the person on the other end is even a real person. Behavioral biometrics, the how of the interaction, not just the what, will become like total table stakes.
Right.
I just think the perimeter of all of it will have to sort of expand. So ATO won't just be the digital banking session. It'll extend to call centers, in branch, partner channels. And you'll need this ambidextrous sort of posture across the full member journey, not just point solutions at the login page.
Okay.
The ambidextrous is a great visual there. That's perfect. Wow.
Sounds kind of dystopian to me. That response is like, something that's just always going to be there that you hate, but you just have to accept it. But you know what? We'll figure it out. Let's be
Can you imagine if this was a plot point of like Little House on the Prairie? They'd be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
We have to make our own butter. What fraud? What is this? Anyway.
I think the main thing would be, you got to think of it in layers.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no silver bullet. So it's like you invest in signal ingestion. The more you can collect and correlate, the better. And then you got to invest in the people and the technology.
Right.
Get those pieces in place that you can grow over time and think about it like an ecosystem.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Great. Well, we got a lot of work ahead, but I'm confident that the industry can handle it. And we got, companies like Q2 also they're on top of it, helping the financial institutions. So we will see. Okay, Jeff, let's go ahead and move on from that. And we're going to go to the second part of our interview. This is all about you.
Oh,
are you ready?
I think so. I don't know.
Okay. Well, we're on the spot. Okay. So first we did a little, background research, a little light stalking on you, like we do with all of our guests before the show.
Yep.
It appears that you were originally from the Midwest. Is that correct?
That is true.
Okay.
Yes.
And so where are you from? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Parma, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cleveland. And I know probably what you're thinking. That sounds amazing in January. And it is, if you like winter sports. So
Sure.
Wait.
Okay.
So born and raised there? Like, you went to high school there?
I did go to high school.
Okay. What high school was it?
So I went to Normandy High School.
Normandy.
In Parma, Ohio.
Yeah.
Which, fun fact, that you probably won't believe until you go Google it. But my classmate and co-captain on the basketball team was Mike Mizanin, who is the WWE champion.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it took me a second to figure all the pieces there.
Yep.
So wait a second. What? I'm just trying to figure out the time frame here.
Yeah, he was originally on like The Real World when that was like a cool show, like early 2000s, and then he became a wrestler, which was random and weird. But yeah.
Do you keep in touch?
I've seen him a couple of times since then, but no, not really.
Okay, great. So I was my follow-up to that in high school was going to be what clique maybe did you most identify with? It sounds like you play basketball.
Yeah, I played basketball.
Did you hang out with the jocks? Were you lovely nerds that we adore, or gamer? What were you in high school?
Yeah, I did hang out with the basketball team just because I was on the basketball team, but I was probably closer to a nerd than anything else. Like,
Yeah, we love
Yeah.
I ended up becoming an English major, and I liked
Okay.
literature and like reading and writing and poems. So yeah,
Okay. Do
Okay.
you have who's your favorite author then? May I ask?
that is a tough one to answer.
I agree with
There
that.
are many great poets that
Oh.
that I adore, but I like all comedy writing. I like
Yeah.
screenplay writing. I like all of
l-
those.
Cool.
Can I tell you something really quick? If you're looking for fun screenplay reading, A24, you know the movie production company,
Mm-hmm.
you can buy all of the screenplays of all the A24 movies. And I have, for instance, Midsommar and Hereditary, the horror movies. They are so fun to read, the screenplays.
Really? Huh.
If you're
I didn't know
into
you
that,
could-
Jeff.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
interesting.
I love it.
Huh.
It's terrifying, but it's so fun to read. Screenplays are great.
And I think
they're fun.
poetry is great too. I used to be
Yeah.
into that more. I obviously did writing for my career, but yeah, I think I took poetry writing in college. I'm
Yeah.
just remembering that. It's fun. It's really interesting. You're just digging so deep into
Mhm.
emotions. So yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, Jeff, next question. So this is actually, we're going to quiz you here. This is a trivia question involving just about the Midwest, about the Midwestern United States. So,
God.
okay, so we
Okay.
got a question for you. See if you know the answer. What is the number of states that are considered by the U.S. Census Bureau to be part of the Midwest? How many
gosh.
states?
I have no idea.
I know.
I feel like I want to like make some guess, but I would say something like 10.
You're close.
But
Not far off at all. Yeah, not far
Okay.
off at all. 12. So
okay.
they are Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wisconsin, and of course Ohio, which you knew. So yeah, that's
I disagree with that because
Huh?
I think 10,
Really?
yes, 12, no. That's dumb. That's too many states in the Midwest.
well, which two should be left out then?
Jeff, do you have a thought?
I'm not going to do
Which
that.
one?
I'm going to do it proudly.
Which one would you, if you
I
had
would-
to give
I
two
would say
must go?
either
just
Kansas
get
or
rid of them altogether.
Nebraska or North and South Dakota. Those would be mine. I give her.
Yeah,
two
we
of
don't
those.
need them, right?
No.
Yeah.
You guys
We
ever
don't- I
hung
know,
on
we don't wanna-
Kansas?
Jeff
Oh,
doesn't
no.
want to offend anyone. who
That's
lives in
fair
those
enough.
states.
I was just thinking like the Big Ten, or the. That's
Yeah,
what I
but
was
how many
thinking.
how many schools are in the Big Ten now? 20?
Yeah.
Something?
Right, it makes no sense.
It doesn't. It's so silly. Anyway, when did you leave the Cleveland area?
I left in my 20s and went to Denver and over to Seattle and back
Great.
to Cleveland
Cool.
and Austin. So, yeah.
All right, cool. How long you been in Austin now?
I actually still live in Cleveland. So,
Oh, you do?
yeah.
Oh, that's great. I used to cover the Browns as a sports
Oh, boy.
reporter.
Wow, now we're really off
It
track.
was a long time ago. But anyway, I'm so glad to have a fellow Midwesterner on the line today. But okay, I got to go back to your childhood. We just have two more questions. My question is, again, to your childhood, what was the first album, CD, cassette, downloaded piece of music you remember buying or listening to?
Yeah, Aerosmith, Get a Grip.
Yeah. You know what? That was so confident. You just said it.
I remember it so vividly.
You
I
knew
remember I remember going to Camelot Music and buying this cassette, and I literally remembered holding it and saying, "This is the first album I've ever bought."
Oh,
That's a-
wow!
And I like,
That
I
is
like knew that I would remember that. I
Awesome.
can still picture standing there and doing it. Yeah,
Wait, and so what year is that? I don't know.
it's like early '90s.
Yeah, I gotta look it up. That is a great one. I don't think anybody's ever answered Aerosmith. Get a grip.
I don't think so either. No,
That's
I
a
just
good one.
made a note of it. Yeah,
All right, Jeff.
love
Had to
that.
be done.
Congratulations. Camelot
Love that.
Music too. Haven't heard that name in years.
Right? Yeah, that's a blast from the past
Oh,
there.
nice.
Okay, so final question here today, Jeff. What was the last movie that you watched?
Avatar, the third one.
Oh, okay.
Fire and Ash.
Fire and Ash. I don't know. Is that the third or is I don't know if
Yes.
it's the third or
Yeah.
the fourth, but whatever the new 7-hour long
Yeah.
Avatar.
Oh, okay. So, would you recommend it?
Yeah, you kind of go for the spectacle. The visuals are
Yeah.
unreal. The plot is, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure what's happening.
Sure.
It's very pretty.
Cool. All right.
James Cameron's a nutbag for making all those movies, but they're really cool to look at, like you said.
Agreed.
Yeah,
They're very
Okay.
visually appealing.
Aerosmith
All
and
right.
Avatar. Cool.
All right, added that to the list as well, as
Yep.
we do create lists of our guests' favorite music and movies throughout the year. It's always fun to look back on. So, yeah, thanks for the unique contributions. Those are
Exactly.
pretty good on there.
Yeah.
Of course, we could just keep talking endlessly here, but we got to wrap it up. Jeff Scott, Vice President of Fraud Intelligence at Q2, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah. And to all of our listeners, thank you for downloading today's show. Please subscribe to Shared Accounts with CU Times and all the normal podcast places. And please be sure to share all of the episodes with everyone you know, friends, coworkers, relatives you like, even relatives you don't like. You know the drill.
Yeah, nerds, jocks, whomever.
Yeah.
Feel free to rate us too, 5 stars only. Thank you so much to our sponsor, Q2, for supporting the show and CU Times. Thank you, Q2. And as always, thank you to our producer, Zach Nyheisel. Thanks, Zach. Join us again next time for a new episode of Shared Accounts with CU Times. Until then, thanks for listening.